What happens when a royal guest mistakes a comedy stage for a throne room? In just 36 seconds, one comment would turn a friendly interview into the most explosive late-night meltdown ever caught on camera. Jimmy Kimmel had hosted thousands of guests over the years. Movie stars, musicians, politicians, athletes, you name it, they'd sat on that couch. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold on this particular evening. The audience was buzzing with excitement as Prince Harry walked out onto the stage. The applause was deafening. This was supposed to be a lighthearted conversation, a chance for Harry to promote his latest charitable initiative and share some laughs with America. What actually happened was something else entirely. Jimmy stood up, extended his hand, and greeted his guest with his trademark smile. "Welcome, welcome. Great to have you here." The prince shook his hand, but there was something in his expression, something tight, something that didn't quite match the cheerful atmosphere of the studio. They both sat down, and Jimmy began with what seemed like an easy softball question. "So, you've been living in California for a while now. How are you finding life on the West Coast?" Harry shifted in his seat. "Well, Jimmy, I have to say, it's been an adjustment. Americans have a very different way of doing things." "Different how?" Jimmy asked, leaning in with genuine curiosity. "Just different," Harry replied, his tone already carrying an edge. "The lack of protocol, the informality. Where I come from, there are certain standards." The audience laughed a little, thinking this was banter. Jimmy smiled, trying to keep things light. "Well, we're pretty casual here, that's true. But hey, that's part of the charm, right?" Harry didn't smile back. "Is it?" There was a pause, an uncomfortable one. Jimmy's eyebrows raised slightly. "I mean, yeah, people here like to keep things relaxed. No need to stand on ceremony. You. No?" "That's precisely the problem," Harry said, his voice getting sharper. "No one stands on anything anymore. No respect, no decorum. Everyone thinks they can just say whatever they want." Jimmy chuckled nervously. "Well, that's kind of what we do here. It's a comedy show. We joke around, we have fun." "Fun?" Harry repeated, almost mockingly. "Yes, I've noticed Americans have a peculiar definition of that word." The audience was getting quieter now. The energy in the room was shifting. Jimmy could feel it, and he tried to redirect. "Okay, so let's talk about your charity work. You've been doing some amazing things with veterans' mental health." But Harry wasn't interested in changing subjects. "You know what I find interesting, Jimmy? How obsessed Americans are with my family. You people can't stop talking about us, making jokes about us, treating us like we're characters in some television drama." Jimmy's smile was starting to fade. "Well, to be fair, you did write a book. You did interviews. You put yourself out there." "I put myself out there to tell my truth," Harry snapped. "Not to be ridiculed by late-night comedians who wouldn't understand real responsibility if it hit them in the face." The audience gasped. This wasn't playful anymore. This was real tension. Jimmy sat back in his chair, his expression hardening. "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on a second. I think you might want to take a breath there, buddy." "Don't call me buddy," Harry shot back. "You don't know me. You think because I come on your show, we're friends? You think because you made a career out of mocking people from behind a desk that gives you some kind of authority?" Jimmy's jaw clenched. "I think you need to remember where you are right now. This is my show. These are my guests, my audience. And I don't appreciate you coming in here and insulting what we do." "Your show," Harry said with a bitter laugh. "Yes, your little kingdom where you sit and judge everyone else? Must be. Nice. Having that power without any of the actual responsibility that comes with real leadership." The audience was dead silent now. You could hear every breath, every shuffle in the seats. Jimmy leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "You know what? I've been doing this for a long time. I've had difficult guests before, but I've never had someone come on here and act like they're better than everyone in this room." "Better?" Harry's voice rose. "I'm simply pointing out the obvious. You make your living tearing people down. I've spent my life trying to lift people up. We are not the same." Jimmy nodded slowly. "You're right. We're not the same. Because when I invite someone onto my show, I treat them with respect, even when they clearly don't deserve it." Harry stood up suddenly, his microphone nearly falling off his lapel. "Deserve it? Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" "Yeah," Jimmy said, standing up to meet him. "I'm talking to a guy who flew across the country to promote something, came on a comedy show, and then got mad when he realized comedy shows aren't formal royal engagements." "This is exactly what I'm talking about," Harry said, his voice shaking with anger. No respect, no understanding of how to conduct yourself in the presence of someone with actual standing. Jimmy's eyes narrowed. Standing? You want to talk about standing? I've built this show from the ground up. I've worked my whole life to get here. What have you done except be born into the right family? The audience let out another collective gasp. This was getting brutal. Harry's face turned red. How dare you? How dare you speak to me that way? How dare I? Jimmy repeated, his voice rising now. You came onto my show, insulted me, insulted my staff, insulted this entire audience, and you're asking, how dare I? I stated facts, Harry said coldly. If you can't handle the truth about your frivolous little program, that's your problem. Jimmy took a step closer. Frivolous? This frivolous little program has raised millions of dollars for charity. We've given a platform to people who needed to be heard. We've brought joy to people during really hard times. What exactly have you done lately besides complain about how tough your life is? Harry's hands were trembling. You have no idea what I've been through. The scrutiny, the pressure, the constant judgment. Oh, please, Jimmy said, throwing his hands up. Everyone gets judged. Everyone deals with pressure. The difference is most people don't act like they're the only ones who've ever suffered. I've sacrificed everything, Harry said through gritted teeth. Sacrificed? Jimmy's voice was incredulous now. You live in a mansion in Montecito. You make millions from Netflix deals. You're sitting here on a talk show with millions of viewers. What exactly have you sacrificed? Harry pointed a finger at Jimmy. My privacy, my family, my dignity. All so people like you can make jokes. Nobody forced you to do any of this. Jimmy countered. You chose to do interviews. You chose to write a book. You chose to come on this show. And now you're mad because not everyone's treating you like royalty? Newsflash, pal. This is America. We don't do that here. Clearly, Harry said with disgust. This country has no sense of decorum, no appreciation for tradition, no understanding of what it means to carry a legacy. Jimmy laughed. But it wasn't a friendly laugh. Legacy? Your legacy right now is being the guy who's throwing a tantrum on a talk show because the host isn't bowing. I'm not throwing a tantrum, Harry insisted, even though he very clearly was. I'm simply refusing to tolerate this level of disrespect. Then maybe you should leave, Jimmy said flatly. The words hung in the air. Harry stared at him. Excuse me? You heard me, Jimmy said, his voice steady and cold. If you're this miserable being here, if you think we're all beneath you, if you can't handle a simple conversation without insulting everyone in the building, then maybe you should just go. Harry's mouth opened and closed. He looked around at the audience, perhaps expecting them to jump to his defense, but the crowd was silent, watching him with a mixture of shock and disapproval. He looked back at Jimmy, his face contorted with rage and something else. Embarrassment, maybe. The realization that this wasn't going the way he'd expected. You can't kick me off, Harry said, but his voice had lost some of its conviction. Actually, I can, Jimmy replied. It's my show, remember? My little kingdom, as you called it. And in my kingdom, we don't let guests treat people like garbage. Harry took a step back, his composure cracking. This is outrageous. Do you know what will happen when people hear about this? Yeah, Jimmy said with a shrug. They'll hear that you came on a comedy show and couldn't take a joke. They'll hear that you acted like a spoiled brat and got called out for it. And honestly, I'm okay with that. Harry's breathing was heavy now. He looked at Jimmy with pure venom. You're making a huge mistake. The only mistake I made was booking you in the first place, Jimmy shot back. Now, are you going to leave with some dignity, or do we need to make this even more awkward? For a long moment, Harry just stood there. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of this meltdown. The audience sat frozen, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Finally, Harry reached up and tore the microphone off his shirt with a sharp yank. The sound echoed through the studio. You'll regret this, he said quietly, his voice shaking. I doubt it, Jimmy replied calmly. Harry turned toward the exit, his movements stiff and jerky. But then he stopped and turned back around. You know what your problem is, Jimmy? You think because you're popular, because people laugh at your jokes, that you're important. But you're not. You're a court jester. That's all you'll ever be. Jimmy didn't flinch. And you know what your problem is? You think because you were born into a famous family that you're special. But you're not. You're just a guy, and not even a particularly impressive one. Harry's face went pale, then red again. His fists clenched at his sides. For a second, it looked like he might actually take a swing. The security guards near the edge of the stage tensed up, ready to intervene if necessary. But Harry didn't throw a punch. Instead, he did something worse. He laughed. A cruel, bitter laugh that sent chills through the studio. "Enjoy your little show, Jimmy," he said with a sneer. "Enjoy making your little jokes for your little audience. Meanwhile, I'll be out there actually making a difference in the world." "Great," Jimmy said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Can't wait to see it. Maybe start by learning how to treat people with basic respect." Harry's jaw tightened. "I treat people with respect when they earn it." "And that's exactly why you're leaving," Jimmy said, pointing toward the exit. "Because you clearly don't think anyone here is worth your time. So go. Please. The door's right there." Harry turned again, this time walking with purpose toward the stage exit, but he couldn't resist one final parting shot. He stopped at the edge of the stage and turned back to the audience. "I came here tonight thinking Americans were ready for an honest conversation. I was wrong. You're all too wrapped up in your own little bubble to understand what real struggle looks like." The audience, which had been silent for most of this confrontation, finally reacted. Boos erupted from the crowd, not a few scattered boos, but a wave of them, rolling through the studio like thunder. Harry's eyes widened in surprise. He clearly hadn't expected this. He'd expected them to side with him, to recognize his status, to appreciate his perspective. Instead, they were rejecting him completely. Jimmy stood at his desk, watching this unfold with his arms crossed. "I think you have your answer," he said simply. Harry's composure finally shattered completely. "You're all pathetic," he shouted over the boos. "Every single one of you, sitting here, worshiping this comedian, like he's something special. You deserve each other." "We probably do," Jimmy called back. "Now get out." The security guards were moving now, not aggressively, but with clear intent. They positioned themselves near Harry, ready to escort him if necessary. Harry looked at them, then back at Jimmy, then at the audience, still booing him. The reality of the situation seemed to finally hit him. This wasn't going to get better. This wasn't going to be salvaged. He'd gone too far, said too much, burned too many bridges in a matter of minutes. Without another word, Harry turned and stormed off the stage. His footsteps were loud in the sudden relative quiet, the boos fading as he disappeared behind the curtain. The audience watched the empty space where he'd been standing, still trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Jimmy stood at his desk, taking a deep breath. He looked out at the crowd, and slowly, they began to applaud. It started small, just a few people clapping, but it grew and grew until the entire studio was on its feet, cheering for their host. Jimmy held up his hands, trying to calm them down. Okay, he said, a slight smile finally breaking through his stern expression. "Well, that was something, wasn't it?" The audience laughed, a release of all the tension that had been building. Jimmy shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "I want to apologize to all of you. That's not what any of us signed up for tonight. You came here to have a good time, to laugh, to enjoy yourselves. And instead, you got a front row seat to whatever that was." Someone in the audience shouted, "You handled it perfectly." Others cheered in agreement. Jimmy smiled, genuinely, touched. "I appreciate that. I really do. But honestly, I'm just sorry you all had to sit through it. That was uncomfortable for everyone." He walked around his desk, moving closer to the audience. "You know, I've been doing this job for a long time. And one thing I've learned is that respect is a two-way street. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what your title is. If you come into someone's house and treat them badly, you're going to get called out for it. And this studio? This is our house, yours and mine." The audience erupted in applause again. Jimmy nodded, clearly emotional. "We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got an amazing musical guest who's actually excited to be here. We'll be right back." The cameras cut, and the studio lights dimmed slightly. Jimmy walked backstage, where his producers and staff were waiting. They looked shell-shocked. "Is he gone?" Jimmy asked. "Oh, he's gone," one of the producers confirmed. "Left the building. His people are freaking out, trying to do damage control." Jimmy nodded. "Good. Make sure security knows he's not welcome back." He paused, then looked at his team. "I'm sorry you all had to deal with that." "Are you kidding?" another producer said. "That was the most insane thing I've ever seen." "You were incredible." Jimmy shrugged. "I was just being honest. I'm tired of people thinking they can come on here and act like they're doing us a favor. We work hard on this show. We try to make something good, and I'm not going to let anyone disrespect that. I don't care who they are. Back in the studio, the audience was buzzing with conversation. People were pulling out their phones, texting friends, posting on social media. They knew they'd just witnessed something historic, something that would be talked about for years. The house band started warming up, preparing for the musical guest. The energy in the room had completely transformed. What had been tense and uncomfortable was now electric with excitement and solidarity. The stage manager called for places, and Jimmy walked back out to his desk. The audience cheered again as he appeared. He waved, took his seat, and looked directly into the camera. "We're back," he said. "And what a night it's been already." Before we bring out our musical guest, I just want to say one more thing about what happened earlier. The studio went quiet, everyone listening carefully. Jimmy took a moment, choosing his words. "We invited someone here tonight to have a conversation, to share their story, to talk about their work, to connect with you, the audience. That's what this show is about. Connection, understanding, finding common ground through humor and honesty. What we don't do is provide a platform for people to lecture us about how we're not good enough, how we don't measure up, how we don't deserve their time or respect." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "I don't care if you're a prince or a pauper. If you come on this show, you're going to be treated with respect, but that respect has to go both ways. And if you can't manage that basic human decency, then this isn't the place for you. We've got too much good work to do, too many amazing guests to talk to, too many laughs to share. Life's too short to spend it with people who think they're better than everyone else." The audience stood up again, applauding even louder than before. Jimmy smiled, this time a real, warm smile. All right. Enough serious talk. Let's get to why we're really here. Please welcome to the stage our incredible musical guest." As the band launched into the introduction, Jimmy sat back in his chair, finally allowing himself to relax. It had been one of the most intense confrontations of his career. But he'd stood his ground. He defended his show, his staff, and his audience. And in doing so, he'd reminded everyone watching what this show was really about. Not celebrity worship, not bowing to titles or status. Just honest, respectful, human conversation. And when that respect was absent, well, there was always the door. The musical guests performed beautifully, and the show continued without further incident. But everyone in that studio knew they'd been part of something extraordinary. They'd watched a collision between two completely different worldviews, one that demanded deference based on birthright and one that earned respect through character and action. And tonight, character had won. As the show wrapped up and the credits rolled, Jimmy thanked everyone for watching. He didn't mention the confrontation again. Didn't need to. It spoke for itself. The audience filed out of the studio, still talking excitedly about what they'd witnessed. The staff began breaking down the set for the night, shaking their heads in disbelief. And Jimmy headed to his dressing room, exhausted but satisfied that he'd done the right thing. The video of the confrontation would spread across the internet within hours. Millions of people would watch it, dissect it, debate it. Some would criticize Jimmy for being too harsh. Others would praise him for standing up to entitlement. But everyone would agree on one thing. It was one of the most dramatic, unscripted, real moments in late-night television history. A moment when the carefully maintained facade of celebrity civility cracked wide open, revealing the raw human conflict underneath. And at the center of it all was a simple truth. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, respect is earned, not demanded. And when you forget that lesson, you might just find yourself being shown the door on live television in front of millions of people, with nothing but your bruised ego to keep you company on the way out.